Requiem was now sopping wet and muddy, and getting tired of uncovering all manner of creatures, intent on having their pound of his flesh. In a trance-like state, he traced his hand along the ice and stared into the distance. Suddenly, something grabbed him and he jumped. Requiem turned to be confronted by the piercing stare of Freya boring into him, whilst a hand of ice gripped him firmly by the arm. Freya appeared to be sitting in the ice, her arms crossed, with her hair flowing above her. It was as if she knew what had been coming and hadn't liked it one bit. Putting both his hands on the ice in front of her, Requiem jolted forwards violently. A wave of energy blasted Freya free and clear of the ice altogether. Flying into the air, she landed in a heap not far from Urisil and Gio. They fell out of their deck chairs and ran awkwardly to her aid as she gasped for breath. Crashing to his knees to be by Freya's side, Gio turned to Urisil. "Quick, Urisil, do something!" "Me? What am I supposed to do? I could try an ancient Himalayan healing dance, I suppose." Urisil stood up in a peculiar stance and began to make an awful racket that could only be loosely compared to chanting. Gio grabbed Urisil's arm to pull him to the floor. "She's in enough pain already." Right," said Urisil in embarrassment. "So you do something then." Okay, Gio said tentatively. "Healing hands." Gio spat on the palm of each hand before rubbing them together. As he did so, he looked to the sky with a pained expression and moaned before looking down at Freya and spreading his arms wide. Just as his large hands were making their way to Freya's chest, she shot out a hand and grabbed Gio. "Over my dead body," she said firmly, "and that is not on this day." Freya coughed and spluttered water as she cast Gio away. "Here, let me," called Requiem as he walked over to the group, wetter and dirtier than ever. "How did you get back?" asked Urisil. "Yeah, it's not like the ice connected to the land, so you could cut your way back," added Gio. "Ah, gentlemen, you are forgetting one thing, that—" "You lot are useless," cried Freya. "I'll heal myself." The group stopped their conversation and looked back at Freya as she put her hands above her waist, closed her eyes, and concentrated. The droplets of water that lay upon her turned to ice, and the grass froze. Everyone backed off as the patch of ice grew. Just when it looked like they were going to be forced into the river, the ice sheet stopped. Healed and now dry, Freya got up and brushed off the frost that coated her. "Well done, old girl," commented Requiem with a beaming but bedraggled smile. "Old girl?" Freya said bitterly, her head cocked to one side, a manic twinkle in her eye. Storming towards Requiem, she ranted, "As if freezing me and then launching me into the air to land in a heap wasn't enough." Freya grabbed Requiem by the ear, bringing him to his knees. Ah, whined Requiem. "But the point is that you are safe and well, and, besides, I'm only repeating what Gio said about you earlier. He even used the word podgy." "Why, you," growled Gio as he rounded on Requiem with a clenched fist. Freya turned her piercing glare on Gio. "Podgy?" she said venomously. "Podgy?" Requiem cried out in pain as Freya tweaked his ear one final time before rounding on Gio. He may be big and strong, but Gio knew that hell hath no fury like a Freya scorned. He turned to run, but the forest had sealed behind them. Caught like a frightened rabbit between headlights, Gio backed up against a tree. Luckily for Gio, Urisil came to his rescue. "Deerstalkers," he coughed. Requiem stopped brushing his knees and stared intently into the forest. Gio's eyes darted to either side, whilst Freya span around looking pale. "Well, not this time, but it could have been. We don't have time to bicker like this," Urisil said calmly. "I'm sorry, my dear. I'm sure the world conjures up potent memories for you, but all the more reason to unite and push on rather than fight." "You're right," said Requiem as he walked beside Urisil, now without a speck of mud on him, and dressed as immaculately as ever. "I'm sorry for freezing you, Freya. I just couldn't bear losing you again, and that was the first thing that popped into my head." "Hey!" shouted Gio. "OK, I'm sorry for dropping you in it, Gio. I spoke out of context. For the most part, he was saying almost complimentary things about you. For the most part, eh? Sneered Freya as she turned back to Gio. I can't deny that I'm glad to be with you all again, and it's good to hear that some almost complimentary things were said about me in my absence. We did all miss you terribly, my dear. It's not just the same without you, said Urasil softly as he walked up to Freya. Thanks, Urasil, everyone. Gio peeled himself off the tree and walked towards the water. Right, now that soppy stuff is done with, down to more important matters, like how are we going to get across this river? Oh, I think I can help there, replied Freya with a sly smile. As Gio passed her, Freya took to the air, carrying Gio by the scruff of his neck. Once they were halfway across the river, she threw Gio to the bank on the other side for him to land with a loud thud in an ungainly and somewhat painful-looking heap. Urasil and Requiem looked at each other and gulped as Freya returned for them. I don't know what you're worrying about, said Requiem in alarm. You didn't just freeze her and call her old. This cheered Urasil instantly. Oh yes, good luck. Freya swooped down, scooped Requiem up, and dipped him repeatedly in the now fully thawed river before dropping him unceremoniously on the other side, to land even more awkwardly than Gio, who just nodded at Requiem, feeling his pain. Freya was much kinder to Urasil, allowing him to climb onto her back before descending gracefully from above to meet Requiem and Gio, who were dusting themselves off and nursing their bruises. Ah, I feel much better, Freya declared with a smile. Shall we continue? Requiem held the lapels of his suit jacket and returned his outfit to its usual crisp look before speaking. Now it appears that you've got that pent-up aggression out of your system. I can't see why we cannot be on our way. Yes, and you can tell us about what happened to you as we go, added Gio, heaving himself up with the help of a tree. That's if you don't mind, Urasil added thoughtfully. Don't let that insensitive baboon force you into talking if you don't want to. Who were you calling a baboon, stick insect? Said Gio dejectedly. Freya was quick to cut in. It's okay. I want to talk. There are things you must know. The reformed group continued down the path whilst Freya recounted her time in the Black Guild House. She told them all about the mystery man, Odin, Florin, and Entropy. Once Freya had finished, Urasil was the first to speak. Did he say how the Avatars Guild was formed? There are nothing like kittens that can turn into giant tigers and human-like beasts in Westgate, and I somehow doubt they came about by natural selection. He didn't say. It didn't occur to me to ask. It is a good point, stated Gio. It seems to suggest there is a power greater than any of us have heard of. I don't know about the rest of you, but apart from the genetics of the East Gate, which falls somewhat short of this, I've not heard of new lifeforms being made, not even by those in the Ivory Tower. It's like there is a sort of benign power watching over us. Maybe there is a god, or gods, said Requiem with a shrug. Even so, it would appear that those who made the guild are not here in person to exert their power. With the guild having problems of its own, it could change everything. Yet, even with all this going on around us, I can't help but want to know more about this fifth gate. I'm sure it will help sort this situation out somehow. With renewed vigour, Gio clapped his hands together, the boom scaring the birds away. Then onwards we push, my friend. One other thing, said Requiem before continuing. The mystery man didn't allude to his part in all of this. Freya looked thoughtfully at Requiem. No, he didn't. Only that he was on our side. Nothing he's done can prove to the contrary. True enough, conceded Requiem, but I'd feel more comfortable if I knew why he wanted to help us. It would appear that we are building up quite a debt that he will call upon in the future, added Urasil. You remember his whole altruism comment. As ever, Gio had a plausible answer. Under those rules, we have free will. We don't have to be altruistic. We could be selfish instead and not repay the favour. Requiem could see Gio's point, but dashed his argument. Indeed, Gio, But none of us here are like that, and I'm sure he is betting on it too, which goes back to his comment about risk. Freya brought their collective train of thought to a chilling conclusion. The question is, just how much we will be willing to risk when the time comes to repay. With that sobering thought, the group fell silent and continued along the path. They continued down the path that the mystery man had laid before them for some time. Even though the path sealed behind them, Urisil was adamant that he had seen various trees before and that they were going over the same ground. Gio tried to reason with Urisil, pointing out how all the trees looked much the same and that it was impossible to tell if they were going in circles. The light was fading, making the hairs on Requiem's neck prickle. Noticing Requiem's unease, Freya walked over to him. "What's up?" "Daylight is fading. It'll soon be prime Darkstalker territory, whether we stray from the path or not. I'm starting to wonder if Urisil is right, you know. What do we think that mystery man is playing at?" Out of the blue, Freya jumped. "That's it!" she proclaimed. "Day is fading to night. Remember what the book said before? That the gate was hidden between day and night, dusk. We can't get to the gate until dusk. We could be going in circles for all we know, just waiting for the right time." "And the time is nigh," resounded a proclamation from the distance. Perplexed, they all turned towards Urisil as he stood with arms raised in a dramatic pose. Seeing that the drama of the moment was lost on his friends, Urisil dropped his stance. "Now, you heathens, the time is now, look," he said urgently as he waved his finger at them. The group turned around to see the path fork and tear down the woods in a great arc under the red haze of the Amazon dusk. Trees creaked and cracked, vines slithered away, and birds took flight as, before them, the remnants of a sandstone Gothic church in a dusky jungle glade were revealed. "Aha! Now we're talking," declared Requiem ecstatically as he ran with open arms into the Gothic glade. The rest of the group rushed to join Requiem. As they did so, the circle of trees closed shut. There was nowhere to run. The great church that had once filled the glade had all but collapsed, littering the floor with masonry. In parts, more of the ground was made of tiles than of grass. A calming breeze wafted through the glade, lifting Freya's hair as she walked over to a large stained-glass window in a sandstone arch that had fallen to rest sticking upright from the ground. Freya tried to make out the picture, but vines had grown over the glass. All she could see was a gate and something black. She went to remove the vines, but was stopped by Requiem's awestruck call. "Whoa!" "What?" called Freya, as she turned away from the window to join him. Requiem was standing on a large stone pedestal. Before him was a vast vine-covered arch, standing nearly as tall as the giant trees of the canopy. Requiem walked through it and then back again before eagerly jumping down to meet Freya. "Wow, isn't it? Just wow," he said as he gestured over to the arch. Wow," replied Freya, unimpressed. "If that was wow, what on earth is this?" called Gio. "Come on." Requiem was elated, like a child in a sweet shop. He couldn't help but dash over to the next wondrous thing. Gio was standing underneath, possibly the largest bell in history. Its oriental air gave Gio a sense of kinship with a giant black bell. Its rim of red even matched his belt. He seemed unconcerned to be standing beneath it. Even if the rope holding it was ancient, it was thick and looked strong enough to hold a ship aloft. Gio walked over to one leg of the massive stone framework which held the bell. Running his hands over it, Gio admired its strength. He made his way over to the large redwood log hammers suspended by more monumental rope attached to black metal studded collars. He pulled at the vines covering the bell and hammers, keeping them silent, but the more he pulled, the stronger their grip became. Requiem was almost ready to faint with the excitement of it all when he saw the bell. "That's beyond wow! There just aren't words to describe. Good work, Gio." Freya continued to frown. She was taking a more objective view, and, right now, she wasn't about to lose her head over a large bell and archway. "If it's words you want, there are some here," Urasil's call was faint in the distance, but Requiem picked up every word. "Words? Brilliant! What do they say?" called Requiem as he bounded over to Urasil, who was crouching by a small pedestal in front of the archway. "Stand and await inspiration." "Sounds simple enough. Move to one side," said Requiem, shuffling Urasil off the pedestal. Requiem stood on the pedestal with his back to the arch and his legs astride. Flinging his arms open wide, he held his head up towards the red sky. After some time, Freya broke the silence. "Quite dramatic. And me without my camera again. This is getting to be quite a habit." Requiem pulled his head back and folded his arms. "I'm not feeling inspired, you know." "Perhaps it isn't that simple after all," replied Urasil. "Maybe there is more writing somewhere." Gio came walking back from the depths of the glade. "Don't bother looking. There isn't any writing, pictures, or even oddly gathered piles of wood. There isn't a sniff of additional information around here." "Gio, are you strong enough to ring that bell?" asked Freya. "One step ahead of you. I tried to move one of the hammers, but it wouldn't budge. The vines just wrapped tighter around it. As long as they rest on the bell, it remains silent no matter how much you pound it." "What about Vega's book?" said Urasil into the eerie silence. "Right, hang on," replied Requiem eagerly as he materialised the book. He didn't need to stare at the book to find the page as one shot to the top immediately. Taken by surprise, Requiem read aloud, "Inspiration is the key." Requiem shouted out in annoyance. "Great help you are," he said, as he dematerialised the book. "What inspires people? Gio? Food. Freya? Shopping. Urasil? Books." "Great," cried out Requiem in dejected sarcasm. "Let's go shopping for some books, and eat at one of the cafes those stores always seem to have in them, and we should be well and truly inspired." A smooth voice flowed from behind. "Try to stay calm. You'll see nothing if you look blindly." Requiem's shoulders slumped. "Mystery man," he said unenthusiastically as he turned. "Seeing as you are here, do you have any pearls of wisdom to impart?" "Go home." "What?" the group cried in unison. "Use the monolith and return to the 4 gates. I'm right in thinking that the monolith can return to anywhere it has been before?" "Yes," replied Requiem reluctantly, "but—" "You asked for my pearls of wisdom, and I gave them to you. They haven't done you wrong so far, have they?" "No," snapped Requiem. "Then go. The gate has been here for a long time. It will be here when you return with the key to unlocking it." Requiem dropped off the pedestal. As he did so, he flung out the monolith and said in a downcast tone, "Come on, everyone. I'll make it as smooth a ride as possible." "So we're just leaving?" asked Gio in disbelief, his arms laden with masonry. Requiem replied as he trudged slowly to the monolith. "Like he said, his advice has done well for us thus far, and the monolith will be able to bring us back as long as we time it for dusk." Freya agreed and added the final incentive Gio needed. "I think we could all do with some food and rest anyway, don't you?" "Good point," said Gio, immediately dropping the rubble and hurrying into the monolith. "Although I am loath to use the beast, I do believe that regrouping and thinking this through would be wise," added Urasil, sighing and walking hesitantly into the monolith. Freya turned to the mystery man. "Thank you. I'm glad you made it out of the guild house, and I'm glad you came to help us again." "Think nothing of it, senorita," replied the mystery man as Freya made her way into the monolith. The monolith slammed shut behind her. The brilliant glow vanished, and the ominous hum fell silent as they left for the 4 gates. "You'll be back soon enough, my friends," said the mystery man. Turning to the stained glass window, his long coat wafting in the wind caused by the hurtling monolith, he added, "Rest now, as you will need all your energy before you attempt to return."